Good morning. My name is Lauren Van Meter. I'm the Executive Director at Safe in Hunterman, and welcome to our weekly podcast. Today, we're going to be following up on a great conversation centered around teen dating violence and focusing a little bit more on how adults in the room can become a trusted adult and really model respecting boundaries for kids as they are learning to navigate that world. With me, I have Gillian, our prevention and outreach coordinator, and also Mary Beth, who, if for those of you that did not watch last week's episode, could you fill everybody in on where you work and the great things that are happening there?
Sure, absolutely. I am a staff member and co-founder of Raritan Learning Cooperative right on Main Street in Flemington. And it is one of three centers, we call them self-directed education centers, in the general area that provide a safe and welcoming space for teens aged 12 to 18 to come and do their education in the way that works for them. And so we have staff members who support them by making the things they're interested in available, form of classes, trips, tutors, opportunities. And yeah, also get to lead some pretty cool classes, which is fun. Our other centers are in Princeton and Langland.
I can, completely 100% say it was that. My own daughter went and had an excellent experience. She finished up at their graduation ceremony last week and was just, thrilled, got a frame for her certificate of completion for her wall. It was just really, we have moved a lot and been through a lot of schools, moving for work and pet cows, and for about a year I thought I was a mermaid and wanted to live by the shore. And so we've been all over the place. And I do have to say, out of the at least 8, 10 schools that she's attended, this was absolutely her standout favorite. And she managed to finish high school a year early.
Yeah.
She's starting college in the fall, and that's completely because of you guys.
That is so great to hear. It was a pleasure to get to know Maria and to play that role, and it feels really good.
Yeah, she was thrilled. And, Maria is part of our teen council on dating violence, and that sort of has led to some of the conversation that we're going to have today. Before we get into how we could be better, Gilly, you do a lot of presentations and work with a lot of high school students on consent and other educational things that we do about dating violence. What are some missteps that you're seeing based on feedbacks from that you're getting from kids? Like, where are adults in schools really kind of dropping the ball?
I think a lot of it is coming down to what they're learning and what type of information they're being given, right? So a lot of kids, when I come in and I talk about consent, or I come in and I talk about what domestic violence looks like, what dating violence looks like, they have no idea that there's any other type of dating violence other than physical.
Mm-hmm.
I hear, but they never hit me,
Mm-hmm.
but they've never touched me, but they've never laid a hand on me all the time. And kids don't, even adults don't realize that there are so many other forms of dating violence, so many other forms of domestic violence. So I think a lot of part of what's happening is they're not getting the information they need. They're not getting the information that they need to understand what's happening in their relationships. They're not realizing that they're in an abusive relationship because they don't have the information to understand that.
Gotcha.
I think there's also a disconnect between when something happens and those kids, who they're supposed to talk to, how they're supposed to report it. Is there a policy in place for what happens next? Or do they separate the kids? Do they put them in different classes? Do they do an investigation? Do they report it to the police? How does that work? There's really, from what I've seen, not a lot of clear steps on support for somebody who's been assaulted within the school, on school grounds, out of school event.
That really supports a lot of the information that we have gotten from clients, and this does surprise, I think, a lot of the general public, but we do provide almost all of our services are available to people regardless of age. You know, if we have a 16-year-old person who is experiencing domestic violence because of a dating partner, we will provide counseling. If the situation meets the criteria for legal advocacy, we will also assist that person with going to court. And also, I think that a lot of our students don't realize that they can go get a restraining order as an underage person. You know, New Jersey does not have an age restriction on victims. The age restriction is actually tied to the offender's age, because someone who is under the age of 18 can't be considered an offender because they would be routed through juvenile court. So they would be considered something different. So that's where, you know, if you have two 16-year-olds that are dating and there is some type of domestic violence going on, and one of the children's parents goes to the police department and says, hey, I want a restraining order on behalf of my daughter. That's not something the courts can deal with. The officers can deal with the crime specifically, you know, maybe it's an assault, maybe it's harassment, maybe it's a threat, and they can bring forward a juvenile delinquency complaint, but they can't assist that 16-year-old in getting a restraining order against the offender. You know, and we'll talk about how that's problematic in a second, but reasons why a person would be able to have a restraining order issued against them, if they are under the age of 18, if they've been emancipated already by a court, which does happen sometimes, especially with our youth that age out of the foster care system. Sometimes they'll be emancipated earlier so that they can access other programs. Or if they've entered the military service, we do have some kids who, because of where their birthday is and their plans for after graduation, are, you know, they'll sign up for the military. They might have a boot camp or something starting over the summer when they don't actually even turn 18 until, you know, the end of the calendar year. And, you know, people also get really confused when it comes to teen pregnancy and teen parents, because for New Jersey domestic violence statute only, our teen mom or our pregnant minor is considered emancipated the second that she finds out that she's pregnant. But the anticipated father or expectant father would not be considered emancipated until the baby's born. So if, you know, and this was an example I used to use when we did training for law enforcement officers. If you have a pregnant 16-year-old who goes out with her 17-year-old boyfriend, who is the father, and they get in an argument at a restaurant and he hits her, it still has to be handled as an incident of juvenile delinquency. But if that same couple where she was 16 and he is 17 and she's pregnant and they go to the restaurant and she were to strike him, she's considered emancipated because she's pregnant. And we don't see really a lot of those, but it's upsetting for parents who feels like the system won't do anything to protect their child. And it is also upsetting and stressful for the for when the minor is involved and they're going to school. And there's no way to force the schools to separate those kids because there's no court order involved. And, you know, something else that parents will bring out as like a matter of concern. If that 16-year-old has a boyfriend that's 18, she can get a restraining order against him. You know, you can get one against an 18-year-old, and it's not unusual to have a 16-year-old junior dating an 18-year-old senior. You know, it's very common. They have classes together, sports together, whatever it is. But as a parent, even though you're the one with the minor, you can't get a restraining order on their behalf. Because at 16, she has the ability to decide who it is that she's going to have contact with. So you can do things like ban him from your house because, you know, you as the adult can, who's on the mortgage or on the lease, get to say who's there, and you can control the electronics that you give your child, but you can't control the communication between them on their behalf. So sometimes adults kind of see that, it's a gap in the system. And then something that I thought was important in kind of putting stuff together for today. Gilly, can you talk a little bit about experiences that we've had where, you know, adults, either school or within the community, try to be a safe space for kids, but sort of create an environment with no boundaries and, you know, try to befriend children instead of, you know, actually being adults?
Yeah, we do see that. I feel like maybe they don't know what to do, or maybe they think if they're friends, if they act more like a friend than a trusted adult, that that child will confide in them and they can go from there. I'm not really sure, but when you cross that, when you blur that friend as opposed to trusted adult line, there's no clear boundaries for that kid. I'm trying to think of a way to say it. They're it's I'm trying to think of a good way to say this. Like being a trusted adult, you have to have boundaries in place. You can't be texting them. You can't be calling them outside of. You're blurring those lines. So you can't be friends or be the trusted adult. It has to be one or the other, right? So when you become that friend, then you're hearing things that you shouldn't. You're probably repeating those things to people that you shouldn't know. And you're creating chaos for somebody who could have a clear, direct path to either law enforcement or to getting the help that they need or to getting clear services, because you're not a confidential person. Like you're not, you can be subpoenaed. You can, so all of that can come into play. So when they try to be friends as opposed to a trusted adult, that's like, I'll give you an example because I'm kind of all over the place. I've had kids disclose to me. I've gone into that high school, I've done my teen dating violence presentation, and I've had students come to me after that presentation, pull me aside and disclose that they've been assaulted. Here's what happened, here's what this, that. I listen to them, and then I direct them to our hotline.
Right.
I don't take them out for coffee, I don't go sit outside with them, I don't ask to call their mom or to text their mom. I know exactly what guidelines I have to follow.
Right.
As a trusted adult, I am a trusted adult. I am that trusted person. They're coming to me, they're telling me that this terrible thing happened to them. I'm going to listen to them and say, okay, here's what we're going to do next. I'm going to need you to go ahead and call a safe hotline. From there, we have our trained advocates. Those advocates are going to get you help that you need. We're going to go with this, this, and this. Of course, I always listen. I will always listen to what they have to say. I will sit with them in that moment, in the room that we're in or with what we're doing. I'm going to let them say whatever they need to say. They need to vent, they need to get it out. I just listen, and then I direct them to where they need to go. If I cross that line as, here, let me give you my cell phone, my personal cell phone number, and you can text me if something goes wrong. Let me call your mom. I'll call your mom and we'll do this. Let me go talk to your teacher. Oh, who was the person that assaulted you? Let me go talk to them. That I've now learned every single line as a professional and as a safe adult. So we know, like safe adults, we know, we're trained. We know exactly what to do in those situations. Right. So when you try to become that friend and you blur that lines, you're breaking confidentiality and you're messing with their head. You're giving them a false sense of friendship, a false sense of confidant, because that's not what we do.
Absolutely. Mary Beth, can you talk about some ways that RLC has done such an incredible job of establishing like the mentorship relationship while also really having clear boundaries about what an adult or volunteer in the program is and what a
Absolutely. And first I want to acknowledge, Gillian, what you were saying, that totally makes sense. Like as I've been a public schools teacher and now I'm in this, our kids are legally homeschooled, so we're outside of the formal public school system. But we've had kids who, you know, during a mentoring session or just a conversation would share something going on at home, you know, and so I've had to call protective services and you know, so we've been in a similar situation where it really does make a difference to know what to do and to follow that. And it doesn't change that we have that relationship, and having relationships with our kids is a big part of what we think makes a difference. So I guess more broadly, when I think about what our learning environment looks like that creates the conditions for our teens to come to us to develop a healthy mindset and to know what to do and to take action, right? So the first thing is we just create an environment where it's one thing to talk about consent, right? But it's another thing to be in an environment where they are treated as people who need to give their consent. Whether it's having their picture taken, or you can take my picture but don't put it up on social media, but it even comes down for us to what they're going to do what they're going to spend their time doing. They don't all take the same classes.
Right.
Just because the state says, or the school, administering what the state says that they need. If it doesn't work for their life, if they're in a different place at that moment and just can't bring themselves to do, say math, right? It's the thing, right? We always ask, how do you feel about math? There's a lot of math trauma out there, but so it's creating the environment and essentially modeling for them that we're going to treat you with respect. We're going to get consent from you. When something happens, we're not going to punish and shame you. We're going to say, here's the process we use. We generally follow a nonviolent communication resolution process where they have opportunities to talk to each other if they choose, right? And either party, like if something happens, we've had stuff happen. And then, there's other ways that process could move forward. And sometimes it is mandatory depending on, to be involved depending on the, whatever it is that occurred. But yeah, so we as adults set up the space to be safe, to have these guidelines. The kids come in and signing up people for next year. And one of the things we do in our enrollment meetings is we talk through what we call community agreement. And the community agreement is a list of things that we as the adults who are running the program and in the space, we think these things are important to create the environment that's going to be what we talk about being safe, welcoming, inclusive for everyone, anyone who would walk in the door. And so what we say is, obvious stuff like nothing's illegal, but other things that are going to achieve that. And then we say, hey, this is aspirational. We're asking you to initial all these things and sign your name so that you understand this is what we're aiming for. This is what's good for you and for everyone who is within our community. But, if it doesn't go well, we talk about profanity. We just say as adults, no judgment. Mm-hmm. If nobody can hear you and you're in a side room, curse all you want, right. Or, if no one can hear you in general. But it just doesn't work for everyone and doesn't create the field we want if we have volunteers walking through the space to get to their class that they need or something. But, get yelled at. We just go, language, and then we move on. And if it's persistent, we have private conversations. We as mentors, we can go to any mentor. There's even a anonymous tip jar if something's troubling you. And so there's just all these things we set up so that it's a safe space. It's encouraged from the start that it's communicated. If you feel like we're asking you to do these things in the community, we're asking you to operate in this way. But we also want you to know if you're not feeling safe, if something happens, come as soon as you can, tell us. And yeah, there are times where we do literally have to reach outside the organization. Luckily, that's only happened a couple times. And but it's we really believe that treating these young people the way we want them to treat other people is really valuable. And then also it's just super cool. Like we get to hang out with them and eat lunch and too if we're in a common space and get to know them in small classes and then have individual relationships with them through mentoring. So yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things that I, was really impressed with about that program and that we also do at SAFE, that I think a lot of the schools, outside clubs and organizations that work with teens don't, is the expectations are very clear up front about boundaries and consent and what I can hear and what I can't hear without taking action. And so I think that the idea of being a kid's friend and blurring the line into trusted adult, and now, you've just been their friend and encouraging them, and like you said, taking them out for a coffee or which we have had adults in the educational system do. We've heard about it from kids after where, oh, well, this teacher knew about it. They even took me after practice and, they were trying to talk me through it. And I'm like, inappropriate. But what happens when that trusted adult is also a mandated reporter? And now that phone call to either DCP&P or the principal or, whatever next level they have to take it to, whatever perceived friendship or relationship they thought was there is now ruined.
It's damaging. That loss of
Extremely
trust.
damaging, not just for that but for the kid moving forward and forming new relationships with other mentors or teachers. Because even when we meet with a client, regardless of age, even when we just take a hotline call, we immediately tell people, we appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation with you, but before we do that, we do need to make you aware. If you tell me that you're thinking about hurting yourself or you have a serious plan to hurt somebody else, I'm going to have to find help for you. Or if you tell me about an incident that involves child abuse or abuse of an elderly person or a person that can't take care of themselves, I'm going to have to try to find help for that. And then everything else that we talk about is confidential. Outside of those 4 things, I'm not going to share stuff with the police. I'm not going to call my boss. I'm not going to go to the principal of the school. But those 4 things, I can't keep secret. And so I think you guys do a great job of modeling that and having that conversation. Like as soon as a kid sits down, like, this is who we're going to be as adults, and this is how we're going to try to influence and teach, and it's going to be a mutual relationship that you as the student have some control over. But in a lot of public school systems, there's a structure within, and then teachers who are empathetic or have like a kind of a different viewpoint try to cultivate these friendlier relationships with kids, and it ends up damaging kids, which I don't think was ever really the teacher's intent. But we have absolutely seen it where kids have disclosed abuse and teachers have so been hyper focused on trying to help the kid that it ends up, ruining relationships and delaying, like you said, delaying help. The kid could have come into counseling or legal advocacy or had a crisis response team come out, but instead they've been limited into this perceived relationship that they have with a coach or a teacher.
Right.
And, something else is someone who's parented some older teens that I don't think that we talk enough about is our kids that are doing sports and after school stuff. Their awake hours, they are spending so many more awake hours in school, at practice, and with a limited number of adults than they're even spending at home. I had a softball kid, and I remember her like right after school, she would walk over, she would have practice, we would have private practice if she needed, if it was a day where she didn't have a game. And so by the time she would get home, sometimes it was 9 o'clock at night, squeeze in your homework and go to bed, and maybe we have 3 minutes together in the car before I drop you off if you're not taking the bus. So those relationships are so critical to kids. But for parents that are, not present in every moment now because kids are a little bit older, that one teacher or coach that decides to become a friend is really dangerous. And Kelly said too, kids have reported to us through appropriate channels where they become very uncomfortable when the, teacher is suddenly like friending them on social media. And that's such a boundary thing. And also, I think as the trusted adult puts you in a situation where you are without a doubt going to end up hurting a kid or a relationship somewhere because you are going to be witness to things that they are posting that are absolutely not appropriate. And like, yeah, maybe not the first day or two, right? Because it's like, oh, okay, like my science teacher friended me on TikTok. That's a little weird, but okay, maybe they'll tone down the post. But 6 months later, when they forget that you're there, and they're right back to regular posting, and it's just
Yeah, it's a really, really important distinction when working with young people, even just people and kids of friends or through the church program. You just, the rule of thumb is never, like, if there's someone I know and they would want to friend me, okay, I might do that, but not to ever,
yeah,
not to ever, it's just really important.
someone who you truly know. And like a good rule for this is, would I have a relationship with this young adult if it were not for my position? And if the answer is no, like the only reason that I know this person is because I'm their coach. Then
Right.
no. If it's because we're family friends and their parents are over our house, for barbecue, then it's different because you know them in a different context. But if it's only tied to your role in their life as someone who's supposed to be a trusted adult, it's problematic. Even if you are not the person who is engaging in abuse against a child, because now you're changing not just their opportunity for help, but really changing their opportunity for reporting and for seeking services, which becomes extremely concerning. And kids do find it uncomfortable in a way that when someone is raised on social media, because obviously we were not. So it's not even the kind of thing where like we would view it as intrusive, whereas they might not because they grew up with it. When they are saying it's intrusive, and this has always been something that they've had, that's something that we need to listen to as adults.
Absolutely.
Like and we definitely have had too, when we talk about communication and how what you say and what you write or what you email, like the tone can be difficult to interpret, and we've certainly seen adults who have hurt relationships with kids because maybe they commented that somebody looked great at the beach or at the prom, and it's reads very differently when it's a comment on social media. Like, why is your chemistry teacher saying, whereas if the chemistry teacher was chaperoning the prom and that very same kid walked in and they said the very same compliment, it doesn't seem as ick. But it just puts kids in a space now where, they want to be on social media, they want to engage with their friends, they want to do these things. Now they're avoiding behaviors that are normal for them because they know that you're in that space. And that's problematic for kids that only communicate through Snapchat. My kids will communicate with each other while literally on opposite ends of the couch.
Absolutely.
Through Snap. So when you're taking away something that's very normal because they're trying to avoid you, it's really concerning. And I don't want kids to be in that position with adults that think that they're doing a good thing. And really one of the other things that we talk about is like, examining your why, and something that we talk about in training, which I think you guys do a great job of modeling at Rare, and something that also I wish that other like coaches and kind of stuff, you run into somebody that you have helped in your professional sphere, and for whatever reason, maybe they don't have time, maybe they're with people and just don't want to be like introducing you, that maybe they don't want people to know that they didn't go to a traditional high school, whatever it is. So the person really doesn't acknowledge you and just keeps walking down the bread aisle at the grocery store. if that's gonna absolutely devastate you, you are too involved in a way that is not healthy for you or for that person. You know,
Absolutely, yeah.
and that's like kind of the other, like, and examining why you are friending people and that sort of thing as an adult, you know, it's something that's really for you. You know, I had one teacher tell me, and she truly thought, like, oh, I need to know, like, how they grow up, and, you know, I can't wait to see what happens with their, you know, lives after they graduate, and who's going to college, and when they're gonna get married, like, oof, no, no boundaries.
You touch their lives and they go on, and you can want that, and you
Mhm.
might find out some things, but it's just none of your business unless they make it your business.
That's exactly it.
Yes.
They make it.
If they want to
Yes.
contact you,
That's it. I've had some very deep
we've had some
conversations with kids.
recently, it's great.
Very deep conversations with kids, just being in their space. If I'm in there for, sometimes I'm in schools for a week or 2 or 3 days. I've had some, and I'll see them again the next year. Unless they approach me and want to talk about something, it's the first time I've met them.
Yeah.
I don't, that, some approach me, some pretend it's the first time they've met me, but that's their choice to make, it's not mine.
Yeah.
If I saw them outside, same thing. If I see you at Costco, because it's a small town. Small, Honolulu is a small county. They see a lot of the same people. I've seen people at the fair, and we've made eye contact, and they know and I know, but if they're not saying anything, I'm not saying anything, because it's not my choice to make.
Well, we're coming up on the, I can't believe we're coming up on the end of our conversation already. I love having both of you here. Just, I think that we have the most meaningful conversations and.
Can I jump in with something real
Sure.
quick that just keeps bubbling up? I just want to acknowledge too that, you know, being a public school teacher, I've been there, and you have this like 100+ kids coming through your sphere on a daily basis, and there's just not the opportunity to connect with even a significant percentage of them in a way they want, because teachers are there doing that job because they care.
Absolutely.
They put themselves into it. It's not for the money.
Yeah.
So I just want to acknowledge that. Like, I hope that parents, I hope that teachers are listening to this conversation and can, you know, get some value and clarity, and because boundaries are good for everybody, right? Like understanding and getting clarity. But I just want to acknowledge that, you know, like it's a natural instinct to want to connect with these kids, and like, wow, you know, they want to talk to me, they want to share something with me, but it's, I 100% agree with what you said, that it's for them, it's important that you use the right process and you keep, you know.
And they have agency over that.
And they have
Those kids
exactly.
have agency over that
They have agency over that, and because that's ultimately, again, makes it about what's good for them, not what
I love that.
is good for us. Yeah. Thanks for letting me sneak in.
Absolutely, very much appreciated. Thank you both so much, and you know, I look forward to the next time that we revisit this. You know, what's
It'll
going
come up
on
again.
with kids and teen dating violence, and out of all the things that we kind of work towards at Safe and Hunterdon, this is one of our most important, because it's really our chance to work against intergenerational trauma at the same time laying groundwork for, you know, kids as they move forward in boundary and healthy relationships throughout their lives, not just in, you know, personal relationships, but with work and neighbors and all of the things. So it's just, thank you both very much for the conversation.
Thank
Look
you.
forward to the
Thanks for
next
inviting me.
one. Yeah.